set up for success. The biggest lesson I learned through all of this is that it doesn't go away. Wanting it to go away will not happen. You have to learn how to live with it and not spend all your time trying to make it go away.
Today's guest is my cousin Kris, someone whose journey is as raw as it is inspiring. Kris has lived with obsessive-compulsive disorder for most of her life, facing the fears and patterns that so often stay hidden in the shadows. But what makes her story remarkable is how she's turned that lifelong struggle into purpose. Through courage, self-awareness, and healing, Kris not only found peace, she's now in school to become a licensed therapist, so she can help others navigate the same darkness she once knew so well. This conversation is about resilience, transformation, and the beauty of reclaiming your own mind. Please welcome my cousin Kris to In the Blink. Hi, Kris. Welcome to In the Blink. We are so happy you're here today to share your story. And I really, in advance, appreciate your vulnerability and willingness to talk about what you've been through with OCD. Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you. It's an honor to be able to get that story out there because it's one most people don't know, or if they do, it's just in pieces. So it's a good opportunity to get out there.
I have found that telling my story has been one of the most healing things I've done. And I think it's not only helped me, but hopefully helped other people. And I know you're going to help so many people today by sharing your story. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just thought we would start at the beginning. And if you wanted to share when you first noticed that your mind maybe worked a little bit differently than other people.
Yeah, I remember very clearly I was 6. So I was very young. OCD can come on at that age, but it's not as common. There are some findings that are still controversial that say you have an increased risk if you had strep throat as a child. So that's something that's being studied. I don't know, but I did have strep then, but neither here nor there. But yeah, so it's kind of early that I know now for that onset to come on, and it was terrifying. As a child, you don't even know how to always articulate things that do make sense. And when your brain is telling you things that you don't want to hear or you don't understand, it's terrifying.
Yeah, I can only imagine. What were some of the earliest symptoms that you had?
I was always kind of an anxious kid anyway. So that part was kind of obvious. Like everyone saw that, but they just thought I was shy or, whatever that looks like. But the symptoms to me were just unwanted, intrusive thoughts, images of varying nature. At the time, since I was so young, a lot of it surrounded like religion or God, or being super afraid of like anything I did I was going to go to hell. And it was just thoughts that just come in unbidden that I didn't want. And I didn't understand why they were constant and graphic. And it's frustrating because how do you articulate that to anybody, let alone as a 6-year-old? Like, I have all these thoughts and they're really scary and I don't want them, and they're not my personality, they're not my wants. Like, how do you describe that? I think even as adults, it's hard to describe that.
Absolutely. Do you think any of your upbringing with religion had an effect on all of that? Or were some of these things just random?
I've gone back and forth on that. And there is such a thing, a subtype, if you will, now called scrupulosity OCD, which we can kind of, if you want to, get in later, but which does affect people who are deeply religious. Full transparency, I am not, but we grew up Catholic, so I think there was some elements of that could have played a part. OCD tends to attack the things that mean the most to you, and that's what makes it extra terrifying to deal with. So my themes, if you will, have changed on and off throughout the years. It kind of ebbs and flows on what is important to you. So I can't say that for sure. I think it definitely shaped my reaction to what was going on, because all I knew at that age was like, well, only bad people would think these things. So ergo, like, I must be bad. There's something wrong with me. I am a bad person. And that was the message I told myself myself through most of my childhood because there was no other explanation. I mean, it was even as scary as, am I possessed? Is there something wrong with me? Which is a common compulsion for people with OCD to be concerned about, especially if they come from a very religious background. And again, as a kid, I had no idea. So I got really nervous going to church. I didn't want to go anymore because I was afraid it would trigger the thoughts. Avoided anything I could that involved that. To find out later as an adult, once I was finally diagnosed, that avoidance is a compulsion and a part of OCD, but it only fuels it. But when you don't know, you don't know.
Did you feel at the time that your friends and family were understanding, or was that sort of an evolution as you understood it more? Others understood it more. How have you been affected by people's reactions around you?
Yeah. So by design, no one had any idea. I think I made up for it by trying to seem extra goofy, extra funny. Like that, putting on that mask was by design. I was terrified of people. Like, if people knew what I was thinking, they would hate me, that they'd lock me up, that I should, all sorts of horrible thoughts came in of the consequences if people knew who I really was, because I thought I was this horrible person. So no, by design, no one had any idea. And that was the point. But eventually putting on that face becomes exhausting. And OCD often co-occurs with anxiety, with depression, especially major depressive disorder, and then other things too, PTSD, all of the things I'm now dealing with more as an adult. But as a kid, you try to hide it because you don't want anyone to know. And there's adults that still hide it because they don't know what it is and what OCD really means.
Yeah.
We think it's someone who's super clean, or likes things a certain way, or is quirky. And that's the quickest way to give me the ick. Because it's just not true. It's not a choice. Being organized is a choice. OCD is not a choice. So I will say that now, of course, looking back, I know if I had told my parents earlier, I would have probably gotten help sooner. And I know that they would have understood. But in those times, this was like the 80s and the 90s. Like we don't even talk about it now, mental health, let alone then. Even if I had told them, I reasoned, I was like, I was just going to end up in a mental hospital or jail. Like that's what I thought. Like they'd just throw me away and no one would want me. So very carefully hid those things for years. And one of the more insidious things about OCD is it takes on average between 14 and 17 years to get an accurate diagnosis. And I find myself in that statistic, as it did take 14 years, almost exactly, for a true diagnosis.
Were you misdiagnosed for a while with something else?
Yes, though, to be fair, I did not disclose the OCD thoughts, or what I now know are OCD thoughts. So I was treated on and off for depression as a teenager, on and off for just, general anxiety. But again, by design, I did never mention the others because it was just too scary, too taboo. So luckily, I wasn't misdiagnosed. Because there's such shame around thoughts and what you think they mean and assign meaning to, that I didn't give myself an opportunity to get diagnosed properly.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, which probably I would imagine compounded the issue. You're trying to hide it, and that makes it probably even worse, I would imagine.
It does, because it skews your perception of yourself growing up. So what I'm getting treated for is as a teenager and onward is, poor self-image and depressive things and whatnot. But I only realize now that I have that poor self-image because of the things OCD was telling me. So, and that's wild as an adult. Now, things are coming together and I'm like, oh my gosh, how it affected choices that I made. And it really does. It compounds and makes the other things worse. It's very uncommon to not have a co-occurring diagnosis of major depressive disorder with OCD. I have not met someone yet. I wish we didn't, but the folks that I finally are meeting, now that I'm kind of out of the shadows, if you will, the few people that I've been able to meet with OCD are all dealing with co-occurring disorders as well. So they do definitely feed each other.
Yeah. So you have a co-occurring disorder of depression.
So I have what is called major depressive disorder that is treatment resistant, which I have a few things to think about, to talk about that. And then I also have a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder, of course, the OCD, and then I'm getting treated for PTSD as a result of the effects OCD had on me. So I get a lot of letters after my name that I don't love, but they are there. And if we kind of evolve in the story, like the treatment resistant part may come up, and yeah, but that's what my official diagnosis is.
What has overall treatment looked like for you now and healing?
Yeah. So
Where did it start and what's helped you?
finally at around, well, not around, I remember the exact to the day that my brain broke. It was June 6, 2006. And I couldn't take it anymore. I started to make suicide plans because the thoughts were constant and unrelenting and ever evolving to attack whatever meant the most. It sounds dramatic, but anyone who enjoys horror films may be familiar with it. And Pennywise, who basically comes out and feeds on everybody's biggest fear and then disappears for a while, comes back. That's exactly what it felt like to me.
Just torture.
And so torture. You're tortured by your own brain. You feel betrayed by your own brain, your own thoughts. So that was coming together. I'd been on and off a few antidepressants. Nothing really had ever worked, which again, I'm not surprised because no one knew about this side of it. So I definitely had begun plans, and my family saved me. It was like they knew. Like, I didn't say anything, but it's like they knew something was up. It was summer break, so I was staying at home during college, and I was just in the kitchen, like, just getting up the nerve to do it. And I had the plan, and I had it all done. And my parents just knew, and as parents do, right? So I finally thought, you know what, if I'm going to be gone anyway, I might as well tell someone what's really happening before I go. As terrified as I was like, well, I'm either going to end up in jail or I'm going to end up locked away in some asylum or, whatever that looks like. I told my mom and dad, more or less. I was just like, I can't take this anymore. Like, I have unrelenting, continuous, horrific thoughts that I do not want. And I think I emphasized that I do not want.
It's not a choice.
Ego dysphonic. These are not me. And I wanted to make sure they knew that. So, again, we didn't know what to do except that I was near suicide. So they took me to the emergency room. And that was the first time I told people what was happening. That wasn't my family. And that was really scary because my worst fear is always that I was going to lose my freedom of one way or another, lose my family, lose my friends, because everyone would see me as this monster that I thought I was. And that was scary. And I'll tell you, the people at the hospital, they didn't understand, just as I had feared. So the answer at that point was to give me Ambien and send me home. So that interrupted, I guess, the period of planning the suicide contemplation. So it was at least out with my parents, but I still had no diagnosis. So we were just like, okay, well, you need to see a psychiatrist. And I was like, I was torn, right? Because I wanted help, but I didn't want this huge secret of mine that I've been carrying for 14 years to unravel my whole life. Like, I was in the middle of college and things were just starting, like my adult life, if you will, was just starting. But again, I figured at this point, what more can I lose? So I found a psychiatrist, went in, and it's actually, looking back, kind of funny in the sense that, like, I had this whole speech planned and, like, it was very intentional so that I could try to portray, like, this is not my thoughts. I don't like them. And so I had this whole, like, thing planned out, and within, like, 3 seconds, he just interrupted me and he was like, oh, okay, so you have OCD. And I was like, wait, what? Like, it was nothing. He was just like, oh, so you have OCD. And I was like, wait a minute, what? What are you saying? And I'm like, I need to tell you more about it. He's like, you can, but you have OCD. And he was like, so sure of it. And I was stunned because for 2 reasons. One, because the enduring stereotype that OCD is cleanliness and quirky and germs. I had no idea that there's so much more to it than that. So I never in my life thought that I have OCD. The fact that he was that certain of it and was almost like nonchalant was like kind of a relief. You mean there's not something wrong with me as a human? Like fundamentally, I am not this evil, horrible person. And he was like, oh no, that's OCD. Okay. So having that diagnosis was a game changer for me. I know that for some others, like maybe getting a label on it may or may not be helpful. But to me, it meant the world for that reason. Because I was like, you mean there's a reason this is happening? It's something wrong with my brain and not me personally. And that was like light bulb moment. So the good news with that is that I was started on meds right away, and I thought that would be the end of the story. And it was for a while, for a long time.
Do they have meds that are specific for OCD, or were you on meds that were more for like depression or anxiety?
So OCD, again, is just so great that it's definitely complicated when it comes to medication. Most providers do start with some type of antidepressant, like an SSRI or an SNRI, along with off-label use from other types of meds. There is one that I am now on currently that is specific for OCD called clomipramine, but it is rarely prescribed because there are so many potential side effects. So that was kind of like a last resort. So I am on that now, which I can tell you more about that later if you want to hear that part. But so typically it's some sort of antidepressant, but that's not going to help the obsessions per se. It's more about dealing with that depression side of OCD rather than like attacking the OCD itself. I am so grateful to him for that diagnosis. However, I wish at the time, knowing what I know now, wish that I had been given psychoeducation about what OCD means and what that means for my life and what I need to do to live with it. Or my hope then was that it would even go away. Like, okay, now I know what it is. I'll take some pills. It'll go away. And unfortunately, that is not how OCD works. But it did for a while. I think there was a bit of a placebo effect in the sense that I was like, I got this diagnosis. I'm on medication now. Everything's good. So I finished college. I moved to Florida. I'm following my dream. Things are going relatively well. Unfortunately, at the time, right out of college, the job I had did not offer insurance, and I had to petition drug companies every month for my medication at a discounted price because there were no generics, there were nothing, and it would have been about $600 a month just for medication. So every month I had to prove to these drug companies to try to get my meds.
Every single month.
And that in itself,
It's like every full-time job, I know.
Yeah. And there's always that fear in the back of my head was always, what if they stop working?
Yeah.
And I went relatively a decent amount of time. Like the obsessive thoughts kind of came and went. They weren't as loud as they had been. So I was like, okay, this is good. But there was always this underlying fear, like, what if it, so that's what I kept calling it. What if it comes back? And so you kind of bury that fear, but it's always there. So that's kind of where I stayed at for a long time. Like I just banked on the idea that the medication would keep it at bay, and that was it. Like I didn't know much more about OCD except that. And that's probably my biggest regret is that I just wanted it to feel totally. So I took that at face value and just like, okay, this will be the answer.
And really what you're saying is you're taking the medication, but you weren't in therapy or doing other, interventions or healing.
At that time and for after diagnosis, correct. Yeah. I on and off saw like talk therapy, counseling, which of course I will endorse. I myself am now in grad school to become a licensed professional counselor. So I do believe in that. But little did I know then that traditional talk therapy is actually can aggravate OCD and make it worse. So but I didn't know I needed to see a specific type. I didn't know anything about it other than I had it. So I wasn't doing anything other than relying on the medication.
What a delicate thing, because here you are, you don't have easy access to health insurance. And so it takes a lot of effort to take any sort of path. And then, even if you wanted to get therapy, that could backfire on you. And so how that is just like a really difficult place to be, I could only imagine.
It is. And as I've gotten older and gone through different experiences with OCD, mental health gives you health in general. I mean, you know this as well as anybody. Like, there are so many roadblocks when you need help the most. And when you're at your lowest spot, you have to jump through extra hoops. And that can be so frustrating. But also, I've learned from it so that now I can help others go through it. But it is just that circle of this, that, and the other. Let's try this, let's try that, or just guessing at some point. There's so many different antidepressants and so many different people process them differently. The undesirable side effects, they can take months to work. In no way am I against them, but it is a long road to experiment with those. So yeah, I was only doing like one factor of what I later found out needed to be like this full-fledged attack on OCD. So fast forward to eventually we moved back. So I moved back to Colorado. Gosh, it's been 12 years ago now, almost 13. And things were okay. But again, there was just something in the back of my mind, like just something still doesn't feel right. Something's not, there's got to be more. But I was afraid because I was afraid of what I might find out or what else could be wrong with me, because that's what I had pondered my whole life. It was almost like I wanted to know, but I was too afraid to know. What if there's something else that they didn't diagnose me with, and I'm actually this crazy person or this evil person and they misdiagnosed? Like, that became the new thing. Like, what if I'm the exception? And come to find out now, that is so common among people with especially like intense, very severe major depressive disorder, OCD. It's called meta OCD, where you literally have OCD experiencing thoughts about OCD. Yeah.
So it's a bit. Understand that? I don't know. I'm like, but yeah, this totally makes sense to me.
Yeah. So I was experiencing that, and then finally, things were fine. I had health insurance. I was getting my meds. Like, nothing had really needed to change. I think, again, like, I had relied so heavily on that diagnosis that I was able to function well for quite a while just with that bit of information. But about 34, so like 6 years ago, it came back. And it came back with a vengeance.
This is like 2019, like right before
yeah. Right before COVID. Yeah. So I was like, oh my God. It was like the day I had dreaded came, and I was terrified. I had no idea what to do. I had been getting my meds just from a family practitioner forever, and they're like, we don't feel comfortable with this like magnitude. Like, you need to find somebody else. So like, they just didn't feel comfortable, which was, I get it, prescribing mental health meds if that's not your specialty. So then they're like, you need to find someone who specializes in OCD. Well, here comes that challenge. And that challenge exists to this day. In my experience, have found people that either therapists or med practitioners that claim they understand OCD. You go see them and they don't. And it makes it so much worse. And that happened to me. I mean, without going into a long story, basically, that I saw somebody who claimed she was a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. Well, she didn't claim, she was. But it was clear because at this point I was still really terrified to talk to anybody I knew about the thoughts. Like, those were still a huge shame area for me, and up until now continued to be. So opening up to someone else again was terrifying, because you're basically telling a stranger your worst fears. And she confirmed my worst fears, because at this point, like, the OCD obsessions had evolved, as they can. This time it was attacking the people and animals around me that mean the most. And I became absolutely horrified that I was going to hurt them some way or another. How do you tell somebody that without them thinking the worst? Hence why I kept everything secret for so long. And instead of helping me, she confirmed my fear, and she's like, wow, you could be like, maybe you're experiencing psychosis or something. And that is also terrifying because that was another one of my OCD fears. Like, what if I lose? It all forms around, now I know that core theme is about losing control. I'm terrified of losing control and doing something against my character, or doing something that is antithetical to my beliefs. So I thought someone who said they know OCD would know that. She didn't. And I was treated very poorly, and it was very scary. And I couldn't find anyone else in the 50-mile radius that could treat OCD. So I was in a really dark place for a while because I'm like, oh my God, she just confirmed it. I am horrible. I have to stay away from everybody. So I started having new compulsions. To circle back on that, you might, like, a lot of people might ask, why didn't people notice your compulsions before? Because I didn't show them. There is such a thing as mental compulsions, which is why I was able to hide it so well. And that was something that this particular practitioner was not educated about. And I didn't know about it yet either. But she was like, there's no such, you have to have physical compulsions, and you don't have them. And so I was like, okay, so now you're disproving my diagnosis that I was hell-bent on, because that's meant I was not bad. I was not evil, and you're questioning that. And it was a disaster. So I also then ended up having more common physical compulsions that people with what is called harm OCD, which is more or less what I would describe what I have. So I hid all the knives in the house so that I couldn't have any access to them. I avoided being around my pets, around my family, because I was too afraid I was going to do something to them. And that affects your relationships with all of them, because it's going after the things I care about most. I mean, my animals are my children. And the thought of accidentally or intentionally doing something to hurt them was the most horrifying thought I could have. But it was there, and it was unrelenting. And the more it's unrelenting, the more you think it's true. So at this point, I ended up doing a deep dive, which I'm not really surprised looking back now, because my OCD manifests as, so the obsessions, of course, are those constant thoughts, images, whatever that looks like. And then my compulsions that I now know are some mental. So you're trying to stop, just don't think about them. Okay. That tell you how well that works. The more you try not to think about something, the more you're going to think about something. But there's thought stopping. There's trying to neutralize. Like, okay, I had that thought. If I think a good thought, it will neutralize that thought. And all of us know deep down with OCD that our compulsions and the obsessions are maybe not useful, but it's so ingrained because the anxiety is so high that they're causing that you have to do the compulsion. And that's what drives the disorder, because you have the obsession, you do the compulsion, you feel better temporarily because you did the compulsion, but it just comes back. And it's just a cycle. So I was starting to learn all this because I was like, okay, I got to help myself, because there's no other. So I learned a lot through just deep diving, researching, and found out, yes, there are different subtypes of OCD. It's not an official diagnosis to have harm OCD or contamination OCD or whatever, but they're all treated the same way. But there are people that identify with having certain sub themes. But at the end of the day, what we learn about OCD treatment is that it doesn't matter. The content of the thoughts does not matter. It is your reaction to them because of the anxiety that they cause. The other thing that they emphasize is that they're not what you want. You wouldn't be bothered by them if that's something you wanted. But again, that can backfire too, because seeking reassurance is a very common compulsion. And I only now realize that I do it all the time, to family, friends, did I do that wrong? Do you think this is okay? Asking to prove to myself that I'm not this person, or going online, doing research is a form of reassurance. So anyway, it can backfire. You can know and do your research, but you don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole, because then you're just repeating the cycle. So I ended up finding an OCD specialist in Denver. They were great. They paired me with a therapist who taught me then about ERP, which is exposure and response prevention therapy. It is currently the gold standard of treatment for OCD and something that I wish I had known and learned about years ago. So the downside with OCD therapy that has been my experience since then is, one, there's very few people that decide to specialize in it. And because there is so few, it can be very expensive and it can be very hard to sustain long term. So I ended up having to see all of their student interns because I had to pay out of pocket, and it was still cheaper to see them than like a licensed therapist, which was fine. But then every like few months
To retell your story, I was like,
retell it all over again, and like that gets kind of old after a while, but I didn't have a choice, and it was better than doing nothing. So they were great. So ERP is basically facing your fears. You're exposed. So they're going to expose you to one of your OCD obsessions or fears, starting at one that may not be like horrible. Like we have some that may be ranked at like a 4 on a scale from 1 to 10 versus like starting at a 10. You're exposed to that, whatever that may look like. For me, that could have looked like being made to hold a knife in front of my therapist, or that's just an example. There's tons. But the catch is you are not allowed to do a compulsion. So you have to sit with that anxiety until it passes. And the more you expose yourself to your fear, and the more you resist the compulsions, eventually your brain is going to realize like that anxiety is only getting heightened by performing the compulsions, even though we think it's doing the opposite. So unfortunately, the treatment for OCD in and of itself can be very traumatizing because we're not all in a place ready to fight those demons that way. And I have other later on experiences with that, but that's what it is basically. And so you have to find a therapist that is trained specifically in exposure and response prevention. Well-meaning therapists who practice like traditional talk therapy can inadvertently affect OCD because you're diving into the content. Like, well, let's talk about what that means. You have these thoughts, you're afraid you're going to hurt your pets. And what does that do for someone with OCD except raise your anxiety, prove to yourself what you're already afraid of? So that's why like traditional talk therapy is not recommended for OCD, just because it's a whole other animal. It's whole other thing. So at this point, I was like, cool, I am so aware. I got all this psychoeducation. I know how to do ERP. I'm trying different meds now. Yay. Like things seemed relatively stable for a while.
This is like 2019 still, or are we in 2020?
Yeah, like into like 2019, 2020. Yeah. And on, really. There's always that fear though in the back of your head, like, oh, it's good now, when is it all gonna come crashing down? Like that's always visible. And unfortunately, so in I'd say spring, late winter, early spring of 2024, so just last year, was not responding to any of my medications, and on and off, and this trial and that. And at this point, I had found a very good nurse practitioner, thank God for her. And even she was kind of bewildered, like, what else can we try? Like this. And it was more my depression, but the OCD was there too, because they always feed off each other. But I was really describing it more as having depressive thoughts, more so than like the OCD. And so we were just trying different meds, and I was still doing, ERP therapy, and I thought, I was doing everything you're supposed to do. But eventually it became to the point where I could no longer function. I was so depressed, I could not talk. It was like almost being in like catatonic. I couldn't do anything. I became incapacitated. I was not able to work, and it was a very, very scary. I'll just say that. So I took a leave of absence from work, and at this point, I was back to having suicidal ideation, and I never in my life thought I'd be back where I started, especially after going this far, doing all this stuff, feeling like you've done everything right, and I was like bitter, and I was terrified And at this point, very few people still knew, friends, family, about OCD, like my OCD diagnosis, and certainly no one knew the details of it. I mean, I had, my husband, some friends, of course, all knew I had it, but I never truly went into detail. Of course, Ed, my husband, of course, saw it firsthand, so I think he had a pretty good, at least visual of it, but you can't, it's still shameful. It was still very shameful for me. But yeah, so I was at a really low place. I was, again, contemplating, had plans. And I know it sounds like cliche, but like, you never know who may be that one person that you really need, who actually cares more than you think they're going to care. And what this taught me was that I need to have more faith in the people that I surround myself with, because I remembered when I was at this point, years ago, that I gave a final shot, more or less, of telling my parents. And so I said, you know what, it helped once, let me try it again. And the amount of, I was terrified. I was like, I'm going to lose my friends because they're going to think I'm insane or evil or too much, or, too much drama with all this mental health or whatever, all the thoughts I thought about myself, I was terrified. And it didn't happen. Not one person proved me right. And I think that gave me the strength to be like, okay, what are we going to do next? And it's so hard because when you're that depressed, you don't want to talk to anybody. You don't want to reach out to anybody.
You want to be in a hole.
And then when you're also, like you don't want to exist. I remember back when I was 20 and I had the suicidal ideation, and it wasn't even that so much as I remember telling my mom, I was like, I don't want to live, but I don't want to die. I just don't want to be here. And that's kind of a consistent theme I have felt. But I think taking that risk is so scary because there are medical providers that is still very unknowing about OCD, and that's what keeps us quiet. But I figure I can tell a friend, like I can tell my parents, I can tell a friend. And I was right. Not one of them turned me away. And that was what I needed right there. So we were like, okay, I'm brought out from, I still couldn't work. I could not, I was still not functioning, but I was no longer on that edge. But I knew something else had to be done. I'm like, I can't live like this. So all that to say that OCD and mental health in general, I have learned that takes a huge multi-prong approach. I think maybe that's true for any physical ailment as well. Like, not one approach could be what you need. But when you're so exhausted because you feel like you're the one that can't be helped. At that point, I had been diagnosed as treatment resistant because medications, I wasn't responding to medications. I wasn't responding to the therapy anymore. And so at that point, you're like, yeah, I'm truly helpless. Like, no one can help me. I am the exception. And that makes wanting to get help even harder. So it's like this uphill battle when you have that label. But because I felt brave enough due to the acceptance of the people I chose to disclose to, I had enough strength to get more resources and more help. And so my med provider at the time suggested a treatment called, well, I should back up a little bit. At this point, I had also tried everything and I was exhausted. I had tried testing my hormones to see if my hormonal imbalance was causing this excess depression or OCD triggers. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary there. I tried diet changes. I had tried neurofeedback. I had tried acupuncture. I was at my wit's end. I was like, I don't know what else to do. And again, at that time, you're terrified. Like, what if I'm going to just be put away in some hospital somewhere and gone? Like, that is the underlying fear this whole time. So I was at my wit's end. I was like, I don't know what else to do. We've done everything. So she said, okay, we've tried everything, but I'm not giving up on you. She's like, let's try something called TMS. So I looked into it. TMS is transcranial magnetic stimulation. So it sounds cool, I guess, and so I'm like, well, what does it do? Why? And it turns out that it is a treatment that is specifically geared towards people with treatment-resistant OCD and depression. Okay. I was like, do we have one? Where do I go? How do I do this? And there, at the time, was one about 20 minutes away. So I thought, great. Did the usual fight with insurance, try to get them to cover. That was a process. And this whole time, like, all you want is to feel better. Like, everything feels so urgent because of how terrible you feel. But nothing is a quick fix in mental health, unfortunately. Though TMS can start working quite quickly for some, but more or less what it is just like MRI strength magnets that target a certain part of your brain that is literally not functioning. People think that depression or things like is like a choice, or, you know, just be happy. And that's literally impossible, because when you have that bad of a depression episode, there are literally parts of your brain that are not functioning. And so TMS helps to reawaken those neurons and get things going again, to literally get something back that you had lost. And I was like, because you need that I don't know, like that driving force to be able to do the other things you need to do to feel better. Like, if I can't get my brain to work with me, like, nothing else you're telling me is going to work. Because at that time, I had also joined an IOP, which is intensive outpatient treatment for depression. And it was frustrating because I was like, I can't do these things. Like, well, when you're feeling really bad, you need to go take a walk. When you feel like being alone, you need to call somebody. Like, have you ever felt like that, where like you would if you would, like,
You're so down.
right? Like,
You can't function. You can't call anybody. You can't walk. You can't. I totally have been there. And yeah.
I mean, and unless you've been there, it's hard to for someone to understand. Like, I want to feel better, but like, I physically cannot do what you're asking. So I gave TMS a try, and because I was hoping if it helps like reawaken that part of my brain that is betraying me right now, is how it felt. Like, maybe then I'll have more of the gumption to do those things that I know I need to do for depression. So I did make the commitment to do that, and I did that, and then did my intensive outpatient treatment for depression. By the time TMS was over, I was better. I was still nowhere near where I needed to be, but it takes time, and everyone responds to it differently. But it is a game changer in the mental health field, because it shows an 80% improvement rate, which is much higher than any antidote.
How often do you have to do that during the week?
So that's the one thing about TMS, is the hardest part of it is the commitment. I work for a TMS clinic now, so it's so great to be on the other side, so I can bring that lived experience. Like, I've been through this, I get it. And so I would say there's two different types. The standard protocol, which is what I did and what most people will do, is using the machine we have, is about a 20-minute session 5 days a week, and you typically need about 36 sessions. So it's getting there and having that commitment to get there and do it. And by doing it, it's super easy. You don't have to do anything. It's completely non-invasive. You're not under sedation. You don't have to change any of your day-to-day activities. It's of course recommended you stay on your same meds if you're taking them. Keep going to therapy if you're going to therapy. Like, it doesn't involve any disruption except that time frame you need to commit to be able to get there. And so that's what I did. I somehow got myself there every day for a few months. And by the time it was done, I felt better, but it turns out, but I still felt, I was like, there's something wrong still. And I realized that I still had not really tackled my OCD. And so I felt better enough through the TMS that I was like, okay, I got to tackle this OCD once and for all. So I checked myself into a partial hospitalization program, which was terrifying.
Yeah.
I thought all the things, like, they're going to hate me. They're going to think I'm insane. They're going to lock me up. And in truth, I probably at that point should have maybe gone fully inpatient, but that was my biggest fear. I was like, I can't do it. So partial hospitalization at an OCD and depression treatment center. So more or less you are there 8 hours a day. You leave at night, but you're there getting treatment all day. It's like your full-time job. And I learned later on and really tell this now to TMS patients, that people's response to it can take time. And I was what's called a late responder. So it wasn't until a few, like at least a month after leaving TMS, that I started to actually like, whoa, okay, maybe this did work. And there are studies that show that there are late responders. And I'm almost glad I was one of them, because now I can reassure people that want to pursue it. Like, I know you want to feel better immediately, and I want that for you too, but give it time. You've gone this far. Don't give up now. Just do this with me. Try this with me. So anyway, I went to partial hospitalization and I was able to do what I needed to do for OCD and depression, and having that bolster from the TMS really helped. And so I stayed there through the summer and was finally ready to go and be out on my own again, if you will. And so I made sure to, find a really good therapist lined up and to rekindle my relationship with my med provider, since I was under the hospital's care during that time. Set up for success. The biggest lesson I learned through all of this is that it doesn't go away. Wanting it to go away will not happen. You have to learn how to live with it and not spend all your time trying to make it go away. So it's that acceptance piece. I've always found that really hard because I'm like, why do I have to accept that I have this debilitating disorder? It's so debilitating that the World Health Organization lists OCD as in the top 10 of their most disabling conditions. People don't understand that, and it is misunderstood. But what I learned from this was several things. One, trust the people in your life to support you. If you feel like you have nowhere else to turn, try one more time. You don't know who could be that link that you need. The other thing is like, if you feel like you've tried everything else, try one more thing. Just one more. I'm so glad I did TMS, because after that, they were like, you might need electroconvulsive therapy, which was terrifying to me. I don't want to do that. There's so many side effects, and you have to be under anesthesia, and there's memory loss. And does it help people with extreme depression? It can. But I didn't want to go down that route. So I'm so glad that someone convinced me, just try one more thing. You are gone this far. Try.
And you think that's really was the change, or not necessarily even the hospitalization, but it was the TMS, and it just took a while
to kind of work its magic. Yeah. And I say all this to say that I don't think it's the end all be all for everybody. What I have learned, and especially now as a TMS technician that helps with that type of therapy, I believe it needs to be like full-pronged attack. We want to partner with your therapist, with your psychiatrist, with your nutrition, whoever you may be seeing, because OCD, depression, anxiety is a beast, and it's a formidable foe. And the more people you can have, the more tools in your belt to combat it, the better. So I say this to say that if you're considering alternative treatments, things just haven't worked, you feel like you're the only one that something isn't going to work for, you never know. Maybe you need TMS paired with therapy, or there are alternative treatments now, including Spravato, which is a drug name for ketamine, which can be really good for trauma, depression, things like that. I believe in like a full prong approach, because you just never know what that one difference could be. And it's so much better to have tried it, even when you're exhausted, even when you're frustrated, you're barely functioning. And to ask you to do one more thing seems monumental. But I think that's the game changer, right? And
having people in your corner that are going to advocate for you, be there for you, is amazing.
Totally. And that's what's so great about my clinic now is like, I have lived experience. I have OCD. I have major depressive disorder. I have what you have. And our stories are completely different. And I never want to make it but I have the lived experience. And I realized I cannot keep hiding this and being so ashamed of everything, because it's only perpetuating this stereotype about what OCD is. And if I can come out and say, no, it is not that, and I don't have to hide what mine is about, that's the hope, right? It's just that if one person, or even like a caregiver, I mean, think of how hard it is on our caregivers too, our families seeing us in pain, and they feel helpless to do anything. But if a caregiver finds out about OCD and like notices someone may be doing some kind of compulsion, if they have physical compulsions, or just understanding what OCD isn't, I think is the biggest thing. The one favor I ask of people that I'm close with is I'm like, please just don't use OCD as,
my friend has OCD, a way to describe it, like to clean their house a lot, or they're very neat and tidy. And yeah,
exactly. It is. So if you knew what it really was, we wouldn't say that. Like, we don't call someone, I'm so epilepsy. Like, it's not how it works. Like, that's my biggest ask to anybody, is always just like, let's not trivialize it, because that's what prevents people from getting the help they need.
That really diminishes your experience when it's described about it.
It does. It does. Sometimes I just have to hold my tongue, and I want to be like, did you almost lose everything?
Right.
because you like to organize some. Like, it's just, of course, so I don't want to be on my soapbox, but in a way I kind of am on that. Like, just if you can do anything, like, just do that. But now I'm super lucky because I'm on the other side of the helmet, if you will. In TMS, you wear a helmet. And so I am so excited to bring my lived experience to people that are brave to tell us our stories and to be vulnerable. And I'm, like I told you earlier, I'm also decided to go back to become a counselor so I can specialize in OCD treatment because I see the need. I see the lack of informed people out there. Again, it's like, if it's always about that one person, if we can help one person. So that's kind of where I ended up, where I am today. So I'm in my 3rd semester of grad school. Next semester, I start my first experiential learning, like with clients, which is amazing. But wow. And then, I mean, I think it's gonna be great. I was super intimidated to go back at 39. Now I'm 40. Like, but you know what? It's so worth it because I'm like, this whole journey should not have been for nothing. It has to mean something. So I've totally switched gears, going back to school, found this wonderful, amazing TMS clinic in Castle Rock who knows my whole story and are behind me 100%. And just that feeling of joy when these people that are going through something so dark are willing to open up and share that with us is a huge moment. And I never want to take that for granted. Same when I get licensed. Like, I know how hard it is to admit what's going on, but I'm so happy to see that people are getting braver and braver and braver. I think there still needs to be work done. I mean, when I met folks in partial hospitalization that were treated like criminals when they tried to get help for their OCD because they didn't know what it was. It broke my heart. Because it's my biggest fear come true. So I think there's still work to be done, like there is in everything. Like, there's so much more we could know about everything. But if anything, if anyone just knows, like, just give it a chance. Try one more thing, please. You are not the only one. When you feel like you're the only one, you're not. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's so true because in those dark moments, you're like, I am the only one that can't be fixed. And there's nothing to fix, but we are here to be like part of your battalion to like battle this thing. And do I have bad days? Of course, absolutely. Like, it's never going to go away. So it's learning how I react to the thoughts, to not do the compulsions, to as much as possible, and learning to accept who I am with it and instead of fighting it. Once you give up that fight in the sense of like OCD is a rope, and it's that, you know, as soon as I let go of that rope and stop fighting, I've actually won. So it's a journey, and it's an interesting little disorder. So, you know, I still do the work. Of course, I see my own counselor. I am also now being treated for PTSD. And I think that's kind of the next stage of OCD treatment is like, okay, we teach you how to face these obsessions, resist the compulsions. But I think what is missing is that human side of like, what about the message I had my entire life that I was this evil, terrible, horrible person, like hiding these horrible thoughts, like that I think now was what led to my depressive episode last year. And so that's something I really want to focus on too, is like, okay, you have the tools, but there's that other part that I don't want to ignore, like the trauma that people may go through, whatever type of OCD you have, there could be some trauma attached to that. And that's something that I want to make sure gets addressed. And I wish I had earlier, but you know, at least I am now. And it's something I can be aware of for future potential clients, and just know that, you know, there's more work to be done, but that's the nature of it.
I'm so happy, relieved for you that you seem to be on the other side of this, although it may never go away, but it seems like you're in a really good place with everything, and you're turning your whole journey into something positive, which I think is just awesome. And awesome.
Yeah, I think that's what you have to do, right? Like, I was given other chances because people cared enough about me to tell me I was worth another chance. So I don't want to waste that. And that's why this is my new like platform, if you will. I'm like, okay, let's talk OCD, depression, mental health in general.
Are you working at that TMS clinic currently? Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we are pretty much brand new. We just opened back in August, September. So it's a fabulous opportunity to have another clinic, another opportunity for people to get help that they may not have known existed. A lot of people still are not aware of TMS. My hope someday is that it becomes something more than like a last ditch effort or attempt. Like it could just be part of like normal preventative healthcare, or like you don't have to wait till you're at this level. Let's try something that doesn't necessarily, if you don't respond well to meds or you don't want to take meds or whatever it looks like. I'm really hoping that with more clinics opening and us getting the word out, that like it can become an option before you're at that level of aspiration.
Is it painful?
No, not at all. It kind of feels, everyone interprets it a little bit differently. Like to me, it kind of feels like a bird kind of tapping on your head. So it's different, but it is never painful.
That's awesome. Well, good. Yeah, this sounds like a wonderful opportunity for people that are struggling. And it's not only for OCD, but can be for other mental health conditions as well.
Yes. TMS is currently, so we have the only FDA approved device that is approved for treating major depressive disorder with co-occurring anxiety. We also can treat late life depression. It is OCD, FDA certified for OCD. And yeah, so if you have any of these, all one, there are also studies showing that it is helpful for other mental health disorders and ADHD, other potential disorders such as autism spectrum, even people with like chronic pain. So there's a lot of smoking cessation is a big one too. So it's definitely on the rise to treat other things as well. But the focus really of TMS is right now is for depression and or OCD. But we are starting to see people that are wanting to try it for the other things and that they're experiencing in addition to. And so I think just being able to be open-minded and give that a try, I'm really proud of those people for wanting to do that.
That's awesome. Do you want to be found? And if you do, how can people find you on social media, etc., if they want to talk about their OCD? If you would rather stay anonymous, I understand that too.
The little anonymous, that's an interesting question. I don't have any official, I mean, I have like Facebook, Instagram, like that my family and few friends are on her. I don't have one at this time, but if there was interest, like where it was purely about, my journey in OCD and things like that, I would definitely like to do that. I just don't have one now that is, it's just more like my day-to-day life stuff with occasional OCD snippets. Put it like all of October I was posting on Facebook about OCD Awareness Month, but for the most part it's like it's something I haven't done yet because this is the first time I'm mentioning it to like a wider audience. So at the time I don't have one that focuses on that, but that may.
Have you found, so I'm in all these support groups like on Facebook that in the beginning were really important to me. I don't use them as much as I used to, but have you found their support groups for OCD on social media and stuff?
Yeah, there is. And I did join a few for a while, especially like right out of the partial hospitalization. And I was also in other groups. During all this time, I had some losses in my family that were really difficult that I was trying to deal with on top of that. So like joining those types of support groups, on top of OCD support, there's not a lot, but there are some. And I did find them really helpful. But I think the caveat with them is that you need to find one that is directed by
a professional,
probably a licensed therapist. Yeah. Or like someone, only because OCD again is so fun that what can easily turn just from support can turn into reassurance seeking. And in that case, all we're doing is fueling our OCD. Like, how much do I want reassurance from somebody? Like, oh, have you had this thought before? Oh, me too. And then we feel so much better for a minute. And then it just comes back. So like, it's really important to go to one that's like regulated so that we know that we're not here to seek reassurance, but we're here to support each other is really important so that we're not feeding the cycle, even if we're not meaning to. So yeah, I think there are some really good ones out there.
I was going to say,
I did
start one, but maybe
I would be okay. I'm wondering, I'll probably wait until I'm done with school because I don't want anything to be, as medical advice or what have you until I'm licensed to run a group like that, but it is in my plans for later for OCD. Yeah, for OCD treatment, I would like to do that because I think just it's such an isolating disorder that the power of people can be underestimated. Like the first time I met anybody else with OCD was when I was 39 years old at the hospital. I'd never known anybody. I thought I was that freak. I was that weirdo. And like meeting other people with it and seeing how it had impacted them was in itself cathartic, but also still heartbreaking because I'm like, it's done this to so many.
You understand the complete torture that they're in.
Yeah. But just having that reassurance, not that that's not the best word because we're not supposed to say reassurance, but for lack of a better term, that reassurance that you aren't that one person because it can seem so isolating. I think that is one of the most powerful parts of all of having a CR group.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. And I really believe it's going to help so many people. And so thank you for sharing what you've been through with everyone. And you're going to have to keep us posted on your journey to being a counselor, a licensed therapist. When are you graduating?
Nice. So all things go well, hopefully spring of 2027. So I do have a little bit of time and a lot to learn, but I'm really excited to have the the lived experience combined with like the clinical knowledge to take this on with other people. And it's so grateful in the meantime to have this opportunity to reach somebody or anybody and also, to work with patients that are going through this, that are choosing the TMS route as part of their treatment is really fulfilling. So it feels like we're definitely on the right track. And I really appreciate you letting me go on and sharing and thank you. Yeah, having the platform, I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Megan.
Talking with Kris is such a powerful reminder that healing isn't a straight line. It's a lifelong practice of awareness, compassion, and courage. Her story shows that even the parts of us that once felt unbearable can become the very source of our strength and empathy. If you or someone you love is living with OCD or any mental health challenge, know that you're not alone and that recovery is possible even when it looks different for everyone. Kris's journey from struggle to purpose is proof that we can turn our pain into light, not by erasing what we've been through, but by integrating it and using it to help others find their way.